Thank you for your interest in the Durham County Transit Plan update. In this presentation, we'll take you through the basics of the Durham Transit Plan and where we are in the process, including what has already happened, what is happening now, how you can get involved, and what is coming up. First, let's take a look at a little bit of background for the Durham Transit Plan. The Durham County Transit Plan update will establish a vision and action plan for transit services like buses, Go Durham and Go Triangle Access Service, and passenger train service. This plan will guide how the half-cent sales tax funds are spent on things like bus service or even new bus purchases and new bus stops. The transit plan identifies projects, what they will cost, and when they'll start. The previous transit plan, first adopted in 2011 and updated in 2017, allocated a large portion of sales tax funds to the Durham Orange Light Rail project. With the discontinuation of the Durham Orange Light Rail in 2019, the priorities of our area shifted. As a result, the Durham County Transit Plan update will focus on identifying new transit projects to be funded and which projects from the previous plan should continue. Since the transit tax was approved in 2011, a lot of work has already been done to improve the transit service in Durham, and more is coming. In addition to the projects that will be included in this latest plan update, there are already service and infrastructure improvements that will either continue to be funded with transit sales tax funds or will begin to be funded in 2021. Recently, several projects through Go Triangle and Durham's Better Bus project have been committed and are already underway. These include projects like bus transit corridors that help buses move faster along busy roads like Fayetteville Street and Holloway Street, improvements to some of the busiest transfer centers that serve multiple routes like at the Village and South Point, and better bus stops that will add amenities to bus stops in Durham. Now let's take a look at the process for developing the Durham Transit Plan. The Durham Transit Plan update will decide how money is used to improve public transportation in Durham through 2040. We need your input to develop the final plan. The Durham Transit Plan is being developed over an 18-month time frame. We began by working with Durham residents to establish goals for the plan and identify what transit improvements mattered most. We then performed extensive data analysis and documented existing conditions in Durham. We are currently presenting different transit options developed by local staff based on public input and data analysis. Finally, stakeholders and members of the public will review the transit options, which will then be revised and put into a final plan. A lot of time was spent looking locally within Durham. The existing ridership, the frequency and operating hours of service, and the highest utilized bus stops were all documented and analyzed in order to understand how people were using transit services within Durham. Regional demand was also examined. High ridership stops throughout the triangle were also analyzed in order to confirm whether major destinations had appropriate levels of service. Next, we looked at the characteristics of the area that made it more supportive for transit service. These characteristics include transit supportive land uses, such as multifamily housing, employment centers and educational institutions, population density, regional travel flows, and equity-driven demographic attributes. Draft goals and objectives for the Durham Transit Plan were developed from transit-related public comments collected during listening and learning sessions in spring 2020. City and county planning staff, with the help of consultants, developed a survey in fall 2020 to make sure those goals were correct and to confirm what transit improvements mattered most to Durham residents. Several methods of public engagement were used. An online survey was distributed through different online platforms. Engagement ambassadors reached out to community members that city and county staff haven't traditionally had access to in order to make sure Durham communities that rely on transit the most were being heard. And key community stakeholders like North Carolina Central, Durham Tech, Duke University, and Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People were also contacted about their individual organizations' transit priorities within Durham. Engagement ambassadors asked their respondents what transit service improvements were the most important to them. We heard that more sidewalk and crosswalk access to bus stops, along with more comfortable bus stops, mattered most to these respondents. Other desired improvements included faster, more frequent service, and service that was available later at night. Engagement ambassadors were also asked to share how they thought money should be spent on different types of transit service. Go Durham and Go Triangle access service and commuter rail were listed as the highest priorities for funding. Targeted outreach was also conducted through a series of youth listening sessions. Feedback collected from these youth listening sessions was shared with the Durham Transit Plan team. Some of the transit improvements most important to Durham's youth are better and safer connections to bus stops, more convenient service hours beyond traditional commuting hours, improved technology, cleaner buses, and conflict resolution training for operators. Across all outreach methods, commonly shared priorities were improving the local bus system, investing in a passenger train from Durham to Raleigh, better access to places outside of Durham, more service running every 15 minutes or better, more routes going more places, and improved access to bus stops, along with more comfortable bus stops. Engagement ambassador outreach was more representative of existing transit riders, so we also looked closely at priorities that differed from the general outreach. These priorities included prioritizing Go Durham and Go Triangle access, improving street maintenance, improving wheelchair and stroller access at bus stops, and providing service later at night and all days of the week to better correspond with non-traditional work hours. Based on outreach results from the Fall 2020 survey, Durham County, Go Triangle, Triangle J Council of Governments, and City of Durham staff worked with consultants to develop 3 transit options to show what improvements in services the transit sales tax could potentially pay for, and what some of the possible trade-offs could be. For example, a choice could be to spend more money on new crosstown bus service to more places in Durham, or invest in a passenger train service from Durham to Raleigh. We want to know what you like and don't like about each transit option you see. This will help local staff make decisions about what improvements and new services go into the final plan. Option A will focus on adding more bus service that runs every 15 minutes or better. Option B will focus on making service faster and more reliable, with bus rapid transit connections within and possibly outside of Durham County. Option C will focus on connecting major destinations with a commuter rail or passenger train. In the next few slides, we will be going into more detail about each transit option. Option B includes a service called Bus Rapid Transit, or BRT. Here are examples of what real BRT looks like today in cities like Richmond and Oakland. You'll see dedicated bus-only lanes that help buses move quickly through heavy traffic, and improvements to traffic signals that help lights stay greener longer for buses. BRT usually has large dedicated bus stops with Wi-Fi, benches, and places to buy passes. BRT runs at 15-minute or better frequency, and the bus-only lanes would benefit multiple bus routes in busy areas. Option C includes a commuter rail or passenger train service. Here are examples of what passenger train service looks like in other parts of the country, like Minnesota and Virginia. Commuter rail usually offers the most service during peak commuting times on weekdays. 3 different transit options have been developed. When you take the survey, think about what pieces you like about each option. The final plan will contain parts and pieces of all 3. Option A focuses on adding more bus service that runs every 15 minutes or better, and new local routes. Improvements could happen more quickly because less money is being spent on construction, which takes time to design and build. However, there aren't improvements that will help buses move faster along busy roads, and congestion will get worse over time. 48% of funding in Option A is devoted to new crosstown service, while 38% is dedicated to more frequent and later bus service. Option A also includes funding for sidewalk improvements, Go Durham and Go Triangle access improvements, and on-demand zones. On-demand zones are defined as areas where there is little or no transit service, where shuttle vans or taxi services take people to places within the zone or to the closest transit station so they can travel outside the zone. Option B focuses on bus rapid transit, which makes bus service more reliable with bus-only lanes and other improvements that help buses move faster through traffic. Frequent service to and from major destinations inside and outside of Durham, with some bus-only lanes, will help move people faster to major employment centers. But because the construction takes time and is costly, the improvements would take longer to start, and some service improvements would be delayed. 37% of funding in Option B is devoted to BRT construction and service. While both new crosstown service and more frequent or later bus service utilize 24% of the available funding. Sidewalk improvements, Go Durham and Go Triangle access improvements, on-demand zones, and transit corridors also receive funding. Transit corridors include short sections of roadway improvements, like a bus-only lane, and traffic signal priority that help make buses faster and more reliable, along with sidewalk projects and bus stop improvements. Option C focuses on connecting major destinations across the Triangle region with faster and more reliable service. Rail service to and from major points in Durham and to RTP in Raleigh will help move people faster to major employment centers, even as traffic gets worse. But because the construction takes time and is expensive, improvements would take a while to start, and some bus service improvements would be delayed. In Option C, 51% of available funding is dedicated to commuter rail, with 20% of funding being dedicated to both new crosstown service and more frequent or later bus service. Other areas receiving funding include Go Durham and Go Triangle access improvements, on-demand zones, and sidewalk improvements. All options will improve transit in Durham as compared to our existing bus system. Option A provides the most improvements quickly, since it emphasizes bus service over construction. Option B provides the most frequent bus service, with construction projects to help buses run faster and more on schedule. Option C provides the most miles of fast transit service that are not affected by increasing traffic through funding a passenger train. All options will increase the number of jobs accessible from affordable housing communities. Improved public transit can help with job access by creating shorter travel times, improving the reliability of transit to get to work on time, and expanding the hours and days of the week that transit is available for all types of jobs by providing more service at night and on weekends. All options increase the number of people with access to major employment centers during peak commute hours. This was analyzed for the total population of Durham County and the non-white population. Downtown Durham, Duke, VA Hospital, and South Square currently and are remaining the most transit-accessible locations for Durham residents. Option C increases the accessibility of RTP and downtown Raleigh the most. Option B increases the accessibility of UNC and downtown Durham the most. Option A provides the most bus service at increased frequencies and expanded schedules the earliest. Now let's talk about some next steps for the Durham Transit Plan. Your input on the 3 transit options will help local staff develop a preferred alternative. You will have another chance to weigh in on the final plan before it is presented to elected officials and approved. If you would like to learn more about the Durham Transit Plan and get project updates, use the link to the website provided at the top of this slide. To provide your input on what transit improvements in Durham are the most important to you, take our online survey by following the link provided at the bottom of this slide. Thank you again for your interest in the Durham Transit Plan.